Namaste and greetings to all. This is Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, President of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, welcoming all of you to this special lecture to observe the 348th Coronation Day of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Not only Indians but global community also knows the importance of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. And since in India all of us are observing Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav, which is the 75th year of India's independence, ICCR has decided to organize events to commemorate Chhatrapati Shivaji at the occasion of 348th Coronation Day. The reason behind that the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and his entire profile is not just that of a king. Yes, of course, he was one of the great kings India had seen. He was a great warrior. He was known for bravery, valor. But beyond that, he was a very good administrator. He was known for good governance on the one hand. On the other hand, he was also known for his affiliation, his commitment to fundamental human values. And therefore, he is also known for social justice and respect to women. Today we talk about gender justice. But the fundamentals of gender justice is to respect women. And Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's biography tells us number of such incidents wherein Shivaji Maharaj comes across a noble ruler in whose kingdom every individual enjoyed equality and social justice. And therefore today, when humanity is facing several challenges, we thought it fit to remember Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and understand not only his life and mission, but also the relevance of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's remembrance today. And to that end, we have decided to organize this special lecture. The lecturer today is Dr. Uday Kulkarni, and I'm really happy and thankful to him that he has agreed to deliver this special lecture at the occasion of 348th Coronation Day of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Dr. Kulkarni is in fact a practicing surgeon at Pune. Earlier he had a remarkable stint in Indian Navy, and after retirement he became a surgeon. When he retired he was a surgeon commander, and after that he is practicing as a surgeon. But one of his important passions is history. And therefore, he has authored more than 6 non-fiction books. He is the Fellow of the Royal Asiatic Society, London, and life member of Pune's very prestigious Bhandarkar Institute and the Bharat Itihas Sanshodhak Mandal, which is again a over 100-year-old institution in Pune. So such an illustrious career of Dr. Uday Kulkarni, I believe you will be able to get to know about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj through him, and I'm sure all of you would like to understand the life, mission and the contribution and relevance of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and why we are commemorating him on this day. And now I would request Dr. Uday Kulkarni to present his lecture. Thank you very much.
Namaskar. Thank you, Shri Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, for the very nice introduction to this topic. And I will try to, in the short talk that I am going to put before you today, on the occasion of the anniversary of the coronation of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, I would like to bring out the various aspects which make this occasion a very important one. Because in Shivaji Maharaj has embodied the resurrection of India's indigenous culture, the preservation of her character, both of which lead up to the India that we see today. Looking back at Indian history through the ages, one sees many twists and turns. It is difficult to pick the most significant moments of Indian history. Yet, if one were to choose in the last 1,000 years, one event that made a lasting impact and changed the course of history was the coronation of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj on this day 348 years ago. In 1697, Krishnaji Anant Sabhasad, who wrote the most contemporary account of Shivaji Maharaj, wrote in Marathi, येणेप्रमाणे राजे सिंहासनारूढ झाले, या युगी पृथ्वीवर सारे म्लेच्छ बादशाह, मराठा पातशाह छत्रपती झाला, ही गोष्ट काही सामान्य झाली नाही. Translated, it means, in such a manner was the Raje installed on the throne. In this era, on the entire earth, the Mlecha Padshah's rule, that the Maratha Padshah became the Chhatrapati is not an event of ordinary import. It's a classic understatement. In these lines, we get the importance of Chhatrapati Shivaji's career and his work. It was considered a remarkable event even in those times. And when we look back at it today, we realize the importance of this significant event. Before Chhatrapati Shivaji's time, Hindu kingship was extinguished with the defeat of the Vijayanagar kingdom in 1565. And all the parts of it survived. As a kingdom, it was over. This then, what Chhatrapati Shivaji did, was a resurrection. And as Sabhasad says, truly, the entire earth was ruled by Mlecha Padshahs, and it was no ordinary event. A Mlecha, of course, is a foreigner. Here the Mlecha is one who imposes his will on a conquered people. When Sabhasad says the entire earth, he probably means India. Yet the meaning is clear. In their homeland, the indigenous majority population had been reduced to being second-class citizens, and Shivaji Raja made it his life work for righting this wrong. It was a fight for freedom. Let us look at the significance of this event for the India of today. The ancient land of Bharat was a culture that made major advances in fields as diverse as philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, literature, languages, scripts, monuments, and by the 10th century, the Common Era, it was a rich region, although divided among many kingdoms, yet culturally a single entity. Almost as if to underline this cultural unity of the country, Adi Shankaracharya set up mutts in the four corners of India, from Kedarnath, Dwarka, Puri, and Sringeri. In the centuries after that, we find vigorous tribes and rulers sweep into India through the passes in the northwest and found kingdoms in Delhi and in the Gangetic heartland, spreading all the while towards the Deccan. Until by the 14th century, all of Bharatvarsha north of the Tungabhadra river was ruled by Padshahs and Sultans. The entire north lay prostrate before them, and rulers like Tughlaq and Khilji began to invade the Deccan. In the 16th century came the Mughals, with their pride in their Turkic and Persian ancestry. Their political hierarchy rewarded such an ancestry. Once again, their imposition of faith and language in all matters. An analysis of the distribution of mansabs, for example, in the Mughal period, clearly show that the higher mansabs were reserved for those who had Turkic or Persian blood. In many ways, therefore, India was ruled by people who came from a foreign land and upheld their own foreign customs, their language and faith. The common thread among these foreign powers, and in this I include the Portuguese, was their attempt to create a discriminatory system where promotions and prosperity were linked to the ancestry. And conversion to the ruler's faith was one way to enhance one's political growth. The demoralizing effects of prolonged foreign rule on the majority of the people was such that many felt it was a divine curse. This long night of slavery continued for nearly 5 centuries. It was in the 17th century, finally, that Indians sought a release from the enforced and coercive Pararajya or foreign rule. In Maharashtra, Shahaji Raje Bhosle first attempted to challenge the Mughal power and install a puppet ruler in Ahmednagar. He did not quite succeed, The establishment of an independent state in the midst of so many powerful rulers was not an easy task. However, his son, Shivaji Raja, successfully challenged the Mughals and the Adil Shahi of Bijapur. He also fought the Portuguese of Goa and the Siddhi of Janjira. It must be clearly understood that it was from the prevailing Pararajya that Shivaji Raja sought to create a Swarajya or own rule. Indeed, the word Swarajya was used in Indian history only twice. Once to gain freedom from the Turco-Persian rule, and the second to obtain freedom from the British. Shivaji Raja aimed to liberate all of India, and this was to become a reality in the decades to come. All the powers around the state were in awe of him, and as a Portuguese letter said, considering his cunning, valor, agility, and military foresight, he might be compared to Caesar or Alexander. Very early, Shivaji Raja realized that language is the bearer of culture. At just 16 years of age, he created his own seal, not in Persian, but in Sanskrit. The seal sets the ideals the young prince had set before him. And I quote, Pratipat Chandra Lekheva Vradishnur Vishwa Vandita Saha Sunoho Shivasaisha Mudra Bhajraya Rajate. Ever growing in splendor, like the moon of the first day of the bright half of the month, and adored by the world, this seal of Shivaji, the son of Shahaji, shines for the benediction of all. Its last line speaks of benediction for all, irrespective of the faith and region one belongs to. Now, how did Shivaji Raja achieve these difficult aims in a matter of a few decades? Let's start from the beginning. Taking forts in the vicinity of Pune, Shivaji Raja first challenged the Bijapur Sultan. In 1656, on the death of Muhammad Adil Shah, he rapidly crossed into the Konkan and reached the sea, where in the visionary act of its times, he established the Maratha Navy. The importance of our coast was paramount, and the young king saw that its protection was the key to stop ingress of foreign influence in the Deccan. The unhappy Bijapur rulers decided to crush the just born power and send their strongest general to capture or kill Shivaji Raja. Afzal Khan, a mighty general with a huge army, marched towards Shivaji's capital, Rajgarh. It is interesting that in 1659, 15 years before the actual coronation, Afzal Khan first mentions the coronation of Raja Shivaji. The reason was that Shivaji Raja was already behaving like an independent king. Afzal Khan wrote, "The manner in which you have fearlessly proclaimed yourself a king and are unjustly sitting on a golden throne, and yourself restrain the wicked and reward the good people. Declare yourself independent and do not revere the revered, and declare yourself invincible. That is why Adil Shah has sent me against you." Indeed, the very idea of a Hindu ruler declaring himself to be a sovereign was not acceptable to the Yavana rulers of the day. In the famous encounter that followed at the foot of Pratapgarh fort, in single combat, Afzal Khan was killed, the Bijapur army was defeated, and a string of forts captured from the Adil Shahi. The Mughals then got in the act. In 1660, Aurangzeb, who had imprisoned his father and become the emperor, sent down a massive army under Shaista Khan, which occupied Pune and Shivaji Raja's own palace. It was in 1663, however, that the Mughal Subedar was attacked one night in his palace and had to flee, losing a few fingers of his hand in the process. Shaista Khan shamefacedly fled the scene, much to the anguish of Aurangzeb, and was transferred to the distant province of Bengal. In 1664, the very next year, Surat, the pride of the Mughals, you can say it was the Naak of the Mughals, its largest trading port, was attacked. The reason for this is given in an English letter which mentions what the Mughal Subedar was told. "Go, tell your king, he has attacked my people, and to protect them, I need to maintain an army, and that army must be paid." The money from Surat was used to build and repair several forts and strengthen the defense of the Maratha kingdom. In 1665, Aurangzeb sent his best general, Mirza Raja Jai Singh of Amer, who fought a long war, finally ending with the Treaty of Purandar that forced the surrender of some Maratha forts and a visit to Agra. This visit to Agra, Shivaji Raja's brief incarceration there, and famous escape are of course part of folklore. The return to his capital Rajgarh was followed by a period for preparing his army, toning his administration, and getting ready for the inevitable coming confrontation. Aurangzeb next unleashed his fanaticism when he ordered the destruction of the Kashi Vishwanath temple in 1669, and again the Mathura Krishna temple the following year. This was the stimulus for Shivaji Raja to break the peace, and he began by attacking Simhagad, the fort nearest to Pune. It was captured by his valiant commander Tanaji Malusre, who lost his life in the process. This was followed by the capture of a string of forts and the strengthening of Maratha power. Most hurtful to Aurangzeb was his second attack on Surat, which infuriated the Mughal ruler. Meanwhile, Shivaji Raja shifted his capital to Raigad, which even today appears the king of forts and is justifiably called the Gibraltar of the East. In 1673, one finds that Shivaji Raja controlled territory from Baglan near Nashik to the border of Goa and some states in the Konkan. He had numerous forts, a treasury that was full, and his armies had defeated the Mughal, Adil Shahi armies as well as the Siddhi of Janjira. What remained was to be recognized as an independent master of his kingdom and not a mere Jagirdar of a strip of land. Raja Shivaji therefore decided to take the next all-important step that would resurrect the kingship of the Hindus and elevate him above the rest of the Jagirdars who had so far refused to recognize his preeminent status. The Chhatrapati was coronated at Raigad at 4:52 am on 6th of June 1674 as a declaration that a new independent Hindu king had assumed charge. There was no subterfuge anymore of being a vassal of the Mughal emperor. Gaga Bhatt of Kashi, considered the most learned in all the Shastras, was specially summoned to perform the ceremonies. It is said nearly 100,000 men were hosted at the fort of Raigad. The lifelong ambition of Jizau, Shivaji Maharaj's old mother, of seeing her son as the king was fulfilled. She died just 12 days later. On 6 June 1674 of the Julian calendar, or the Jyeshta Shuddha Trayodashi of the Shaka year 1596, Shivaji Raja assumed important titles of kingship. The first was the title of Kshatriya Kulavatams, and the second was Chhatrapati. As Chhatrapati, he held a royal umbrella above his own head, signifying sovereignty, and he also minted his own coins in gold and copper. And the third sign of kingship was when he started his own era, the Rajyabhishek Shak or the Shiva Shak. That is why Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is called the Shakakarta Shivaji, or one who began his own calendar from the date of his coronation. In many Marathi letters, one finds the mention of his Shaka for many decades afterwards. The official language of the kingdom was not Persian, it was Marathi. In fact, Persian words had come into Marathi and were weeded out, and a special Rajya Vyavahar Kosh was compiled for this purpose. All these acts speak of his desire to assert the rights and identity of the indigenous Hindu people and free them from the prolonged period of bondage they had been subjected to. The crux of the matter was that Chhatrapati Shivaji was now a sovereign king who would not bow before anybody else. The coronation cemented his legal, social, and religious position as a legitimate ruler of a people. The coronation in Raigad was a glorious celebration that has been described by many Indian and European authorities. 50 lakh rupees may have been spent on the ceremony itself. John Fryer, an English physician, describes a grand ceremony based on Henry Oxenden's visit for the coronation. Found the Raja sitting on a magnificent throne and all his nobles, the 8 Pradhans, waiting on him in rich attire. His son Sambhaji Raja, the Peshwa, Moro Pandit, and others seated under the throne. On each side of the throne hung on gilded lances many emblems of dominion and government, as on the right were 2 great fishes' heads of gold with very large teeth. On the left, several horses' tails, a pair of gold scales on a very high lance, equally poised, an emblem of justice. And as the Englishmen returned, to their wonder, they found at the Mahadwar two small elephants on two sides, and two fair horses with gold trappings, bridles, and rich furniture, which made them admire how they brought them up the hill, the passage being both difficult and hazardous. The emblems that Oxenden noticed are symbolic of Chhatrapati's desire to rule the seas and the land and to dispense justice. There are many descriptions of the coronation in Marathi Bakhars, who speak of large procession in the fort with elephants and horses and so on, which, of course, given the inaccessibility of the fort, are difficult to imagine today. The meaning of the coronation comes to us in letters Chhatrapati Shivaji wrote when he embarked on his expedition to the south called the Dakshin Digvijay that took his empire to the banks of the Kaveri. One was addressed to an adversary named Maloji Ghorpade, in which he told him how he had decided to unite the south against the Pathan Behlol Khan of Bijapur. And even the Qutub Shah of Golconda had become a friend for this purpose. Chhatrapati Shivaji visited Golconda and he wrote about his meeting with Qutub Shah. Upon learning that I had already declared myself an independent king, Qutub Shah excused me the usual Muslim ceremonials which he used to exact from one and all, which was touching one's head on the ground before him. The Qutub Shah and I met on equal terms, both coming halfway for the meeting. He received me most honorably and with sincere greetings. Holding me with his hand, he seated me by his side and showed various marks of respect, cementing our mutual friendship. The entire letter shows Chhatrapati Shivaji's aims. It was the consolidation of an independent Maratha kingdom. In his southern expedition, he rebuilt the fort of Jinji and captured all the territory in the region. Then he decided to meet his stepbrother Ekoji, who was at Tanjavur. Ekoji was alarmed and initially sent an army manned with Turks to attack Chhatrapati Shivaji's general Hambir Rao Mohite. However, Ekoji was defeated. Shivaji Maharaj then wrote to Ekoji, "The gods and goddesses have favored me. Through their favor, I have been able to beat down the Turks. How could you hope to win against me with the help of these Turks?" It is worthy of notice that Ekoji removed his Muslim advisors thereafter and the two brothers signed a treaty. The sixth clause in their treaty is significant. No one who is wicked and an enemy of the Hindu religion should be harbored by the state. Such person should be kept away from the power of doing harm. The kingdom of Chhatrapati Shivaji was based on a sound moral and religious foundation. It was clear that the Yavana was the enemy and a Swaraj has to be established. Women were specially protected. No person in his army was permitted to carry women folk with him. Mainly, the kingdom established by Chhatrapati Shivaji in India was the first indigenous empire after 5 centuries of foreign rule, and it was the last before India once again had to suffer in bondage under British rule. The importance of the Maratha Empire, founded under his kingship on 6 June 1674, therefore, cannot be overstated or exaggerated. The great difficulties that Chhatrapati Shivaji endured and the powerful enemies he countered successfully mark him out as one of India's greatest sovereigns. And today, 348 years from the date of the coronation, we see the signs of what that resurrection of our indigenous rule and culture around us means. Thank you.